Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. All you do is eat and sleep. And then I did this. It had been almost 2 years since I lost my husband, David. 33 years of shared life. 33 years of shared smiles, knowing silences, trivial disagreements, and dreams built together. We weren't a perfect couple, no one is, but we were united by an unwavering tenderness. David had that rare ability to make simple things beautiful, and difficult things bearable. We opened a small bookstore together in the quiet, historic Beacon Hill neighborhood of Boston. It was our dream project, born one autumn evening around a roaring fire and 2 glasses of red wine. The bookstore was called Autumn Leaves, in homage to this season that we loved so much. The name came naturally, like a promise of welcome, of warmth, of returning to oneself. Every detail of the place bore his mark. The bookshelves he'd built himself, the old leather armchair he'd found at a flea market, the smell of wood and old pages he maintained with almost religious care. He'd even designed the logo, a softly contoured maple leaf resting on an open book. It was more than a business. It was our refuge, our world. But there it was. One day in January, David came home with a stomach ache. 3 weeks later, the words came: pancreatic cancer, advanced stage, incurable. I still remember the look in his eyes that day. No fear. Just a deep sadness at having to leave me alone. And I didn't yet know that you could die halfway while still being alive. When he left, something inside me froze. Not suddenly. No. Like a slow fall into an icy sea. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't even crying much. I simply ceased to fully exist. I continued to get up, to eat vaguely, to pretend in front of others. But the truth was that I had become a ghost, wandering in a silent house, where every object reminded me of his voice, his laughter, his presence. My name was Susan Mitchell, I was 59 years old, and I was barely surviving. My days were all the same. I got up late and kept my dressing gown on until the afternoon. I heated tea that I didn't drink. Sometimes I stared at the television screen without seeing or hearing. I laughed mechanically at the same comedy scenes. Sometimes I would spend an entire hour watching the slow movement of the light on the wall. The bookstore, our baby, closed its doors a year after his death. I no longer had the strength. I no longer saw the point. The shelves remained full, but covered in dust. The books had fallen silent. Like me. The silence in the shop hurt, because it no longer told anything. Andrew, my only son, had moved back home for a while after completing his master's degree in finance. He was serious, responsible, and sometimes a little harsh. He'd inherited his father's rigor, but not yet his tenderness. I guess he didn't know how to help me. Or maybe he couldn't stand seeing me like this anymore. And that morning, a gray Tuesday, while I had been mechanically turning my spoon in an empty bowl for 10 minutes, he dropped this sentence. All you do is eat and sleep, Mom. That's all you do all day, seriously. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't angry. His tone was neutral. Too neutral. As if he'd given up expecting anything else from me. But in his mouth, it split my soul. It was a blow. Silent. Sharp. Deep. I said nothing. I didn't look up. I just continued wiping a spoon I'd already scrubbed 100 times. As if, with time, it would shine enough to show me who I'd become. But that night, I didn't sleep. Andrew's words looped through my head like a cold litany. All you do is eat and sleep. What if it were true? What if I had become the woman I once feared I would become? Off. Useless. Transparent. A living dead woman. So, in the darkness of my room, with my eyes wide open, a question slowly emerged. What if I'm not finished yet? The next day, at 5:30 in the morning, without an alarm, without really thinking about it, I got up. Not abruptly. Not like someone with a plan, but like a woman whom sleep no longer wants to welcome. The house was still shrouded in a thick silence. Andrew was asleep upstairs. The only sound was the creaking of the old floorboards beneath my bare feet. I walked into the bathroom. The white light of the neon was cruel. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time, longer than I had in months. Maybe years. What I saw shook me. Deep circles, hollowed out like scars. My hair, once brown and wavy, was now flat, dull, and shapeless. My skin, once rosy, looked gray, tired, almost translucent. I felt ashamed. Not because of Andrew's look. Not from him. From me. Shame for letting my light go out, for forgetting myself in the folds of pain. But there was something else in that mirror. A glow. A gentle anger. An underground wave ready to rise. So, without really knowing why, I went to find an old sweatshirt, put on some sneakers, and went down to the basement, that cold room I had been avoiding for months. The smell of dust and damp cardboard hit me as soon as I opened the door. Everything was still there. Piled up. Frozen. Forgotten. Boxes from the bookstore, intact, lined up against the walls like coffins of memories. Order books, inventory records, reading evening posters, photos of smiling customers, book signings from guest authors, autographed copies, fall posters. And the little children's notes, scribbled by hand, hung one day on the walls of the children's corner, which David called the Garden of Stories. I stood there for a moment, paralyzed by all that passed. I felt like every box contained a part of me. A version of Susan Mitchell that I had locked away there, with her dreams, her passion, her voice. I opened a box at random. A yellowed paper slipped out of an old book, like a forgotten petal. I grabbed it. My hands were shaking. Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell, thanks to you I enjoy reading now. Sign, Emily, 9ans. A simple sentence. Clumsy handwriting, drawn in pink felt-tip pen. And then, everything inside me broke. The tears came suddenly, hot, uncontrollable. I crouched down, my forehead against my knees, and cried like I hadn't cried since the funeral. But this time, it wasn't just sadness. It was a mixture of pain, nostalgia, and awakening. Emily. 9 years old. A little note scribbled years earlier. And that was all it took for me to remember who I was. Of what I had built. Of what I had passed on. Of what I still had to offer. When the tears subsided, I wiped my cheeks with the sleeve of my sweatshirt. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. A true smile. A smile from the gut. Something had just turned back on. A spark. Petite, fragile. But real. I wasn't dead. Not yet. And maybe that day, in that silent basement, with a crumpled child's note in my hand, I was born a second time. Over the next few days, I went to work like a woman possessed, or perhaps like a woman who, after being lost in the shadows for too long, finally felt the light touch her skin. Not a harsh light. A timid, almost fragile light, but enough to keep me moving forward. I started with the attic, then the garage, then every forgotten drawer. I was making piles, to keep, to give, to throw away. Each object brought back a memory. An old illustrated bookmark reminded me of a poetry evening we once hosted for teenagers. A scented candle evoked a freezing winter when David surprised me with a dinner party among the shelves. A photo I found between two books made me laugh through my tears. It was 6-year-old Andrew, dressed as a wizard for Halloween, holding a novel that was way too big for him. Everything was imbued with our history. But this time, I didn't shy away from the memories. I looked them in the face. And I put them back together like you glue the pieces of a broken mirror back together. Then one morning, I took a deep breath, and called Mrs. Browning, the owner of the building where our bookstore was located. She was an elderly woman, strict but fair, whom David respected greatly. "Susan," she said, surprised. Yes. I wanted to know if the premises are still available. A silence. Then a warm, almost emotional voice. I never rented the space again. I couldn't. Every time someone visited, I thought, what if she comes back? So I waited. I'm glad you called. Tears welled up in my eyes. Again. But this time, they were tears of gratitude, and a little wonder too. Maybe the world hadn't completely forgotten me. Maybe some doors, even closed ones, are waiting for us. The next day, I crossed the threshold of the bookstore again. The shutters were closed, dust rained, but I still felt the soul of the place. The floorboards still creaked in the same spot. The smell of books, even when they were extinguished, persisted. I closed my eyes and saw him again, David, behind the counter, raising his head to smile at me. I whispered into the silence. We'll bring her back to life, David. I promise you. Then I contacted Chloe Sanders, a young decorator recommended to me by a former client. She arrived in jeans, her arms laden with fabric and color samples, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. I know your bookstore well. My mother used to take me there when I was little. It's where I read my very first novel. His sentence flashed through me. More proof. The bookstore was not just our project, it left a mark on others. Chloe and I reworked the space together. We repainted the walls in warm colors, relaid light wood, installed soft light garlands, added a reading corner with giant cushions, and a discreet coffee corner near the window. David's leather armchair returned to its place in the corner. An old friend helped us get the espresso machine working. And then, one evening, in a burst of audacity, I posted a photo on Facebook, the bookstore logo, a maple leaf placed on a book, with the caption, Autumn Leaves is coming back soon. Join me for this new chapter. I was expecting a few likes. Maybe 2 or 3 comments. But what I received shocked me. Dozens, then hundreds of messages poured in. Former customers wrote, I'm so glad you're back. We need you in the neighborhood. Teachers. The bookstore Autumn Leaves changed the lives of my students. Neighbors. Finally some good news. We can't wait to see you again. And above all, children who had become adults, who wrote me messages full of memories. Mrs. Mitchell, it was in your shop that I discovered Harry Potter. I have never forgotten it. I still remember the day you gave me a book because I didn't have enough money. Your bookstore saved me from a difficult adolescence. Thank you for coming back. I read each message with silent tears, my hands trembling on my keyboard. I didn't know you could live again through the words of others. All this time, Andrew was watching me. He didn't say anything. He let me do it. But I felt his gaze on me, often. A fresh perspective. Worried sometimes. Impressed, too. He didn't understand what was happening. He didn't know that his passing remark had been the trigger. He didn't imagine that by making this judgment, he had unknowingly held up a mirror to me, and that I had chosen to no longer run away from my reflection. And I didn't say anything either. I let him see. I let him discover this other version of his mother, the one he had perhaps forgotten. Or the one he had never really known before. On the day of the reopening, it was raining gently, as if the sky wanted to wash away the last remnants of sorrow in the alleys of Beacon Hill. The light was pale, the drops beaded on the windows like silent tears. I could have believed that this rain would ruin everything, that no one would come, that I had dreamed too hard, too far away. And yet, at exactly 9 a.m., as I turned the key in the lock of the glass door of Autumn Leaves, there were already people waiting. 3 women under a colorful umbrella. A man in a raincoat, a book under his arm. A teenage girl with a tote bag full of novels. They smiled at me. I smiled back, but couldn't speak right away. My throat tightened. Welcome, I whispered, my hands trembling slightly. The bell jingled softly as the first customer entered. An elderly woman, bundled up in a long, midnight blue coat. She scanned the freshly painted shelves, the stacks of books, and the small coffee corner. "It's even more beautiful than I remember," she said, almost moved. "Thank you for coming back," I breathed. I had baked homemade cookies, a tradition David had started. "A good book deserves a good treat," he always said. The coffee steamed in the new machine, the smell of almonds and cinnamon wafting through the air. I had placed a small handwritten sign near the door. "Come in, sit down, and let the words carry you away." And people came in. More and more of them. Some came as curious visitors. Others as faithful followers. Many recognized me. Some simply hugged me, without a word. There was a warmth in their gestures, a humanity I thought I had lost. A little boy sat down in the reading corner without waiting. He opened a picture book and began to read quietly. His mother gave me a grateful look. A young woman asked me if she could sit down with her computer and work in peace. An elderly couple found The Old Man and the Sea on a shelf and exclaimed together, almost in chorus. The bookstore was filled with life. Of muffled laughter, murmurs, turning pages, clinking of cups. Around noon, an English teacher from the neighboring high school, Mrs. Carter, an energetic woman with red glasses, came up to me. "Ms. Mitchell, I don't know if you remember me. You recommended books to my entire class 10 years ago. I'd like to organize readings here. Once a month. So my students can rediscover what reading means, away from screens." I wanted to kiss him. "It would be an honor," I simply replied, my voice trembling. Then a young man, barely 20 years old, with curly hair and a notebook in his hand, approached me timidly. "I've been coming here since I was 8 years old. I know every corner of this bookstore. If you ever need help on Saturdays, I can be there. Volunteer, if necessary." I looked at him in amazement. And I said yes. And me? I was floating. Like in a dream where nothing hurts, where everything heals. Every look, every step, every word in my bookstore gave me back a piece of myself. Evening fell slowly. The customers gradually left. The lights in the bookstore were dimmed, and silence returned, but a quiet, gentle silence, full of new memories. I was putting away some books behind the counter. My fingers brushed the covers as if they were sacred objects. I didn't want to close the door yet. I wanted to stay there, enveloped in the human warmth I had missed so much. And that's when the door opened. Andrew. He was wearing his city coat, still wet from the rain. He was holding something in his hands, a crumpled envelope. He moved forward, slowly. His gaze was different. There was no longer that distance, that analytical coldness that he had adopted in recent months. There was vulnerability. And something else, deeper. He stopped in front of the counter. "I resigned this morning," he said calmly. "What?" I barely whispered. "My job. The company. The Excel spreadsheets. The meaningless numbers. I left all that behind." He paused. "I've been watching you for weeks. I've seen you get back up. I've seen you rekindle this place like you rekindle a house in a forgotten city. You brought life back here. You reminded me what meaning means." He placed the envelope on the counter. My throat tightened. "Mom. Do you think I can work here with you? Not as a son. Not as a pity. As a man who wants to learn. To build. To believe in something. With you." I didn't answer right away. I looked at him for a long time. And in his eyes, I understood. He didn't judge me anymore. He admired me. I walked around the counter. I hugged him. Tightly. For a long time. And I whispered in his ear. "Welcome home. Today, Andrew is my partner." And this word, partner, is not a symbolic label. It is a reality, a bond built daily, in trust, in respect, in silences and bursts of laughter shared between two shelves. He found his place here, not because I gave it to him, but because he earned it, shaped it in his own way. He handles social media with a natural talent, juggling literary quotes, funny short videos, and book recommendations. Each post is like a bridge between the bookstore and people's hearts. Thanks to him, Autumn Leaves has brought together a community far beyond Beacon Hill, readers of all ages, from all walks of life, who feel at home within our walls, even from a distance. He started a young adult book club every Thursday night. The reading corner then transforms into a living circle, the armchairs are moved, the lights are dimmed, candles are lit, and sometimes even discreet playlists are playing in the background. We talk about dystopias, poetry, manga, and great classics. But above all, we talk about life, fear, the future, love, and what we don't read in textbooks. Andrew is a good listener. He doesn't lecture, he creates a space where young people can lay down their words like laying down a burden. He also helps me select new releases. Our tastes are different, but that's what makes the bookstore so lively. He encourages me to read things I would never have opened, and I take him to my hidden corners of forgotten literature. It's an ongoing dialogue. And each book is a bridge between us. And of course, he makes the best cappuccinos in the neighborhood. It became a local joke, "You haven't tried Andrew's cappuccino? Then you've never really been here." He sometimes draws hearts or leaves in the moss. The children love it. They run towards him, shouting his name as if he were some kind of magician. And he is, in his own way. One quiet afternoon, while I was sorting through bills in the back office, I heard his voice. Clear. Calm. Ripe. He was talking to an elderly customer I knew well, Ms. Ellison, a former literature teacher, always dressed to the nines, her leather bag slung over her elbow like a trophy. I wasn't listening on purpose. But his words stopped me in my tracks. My mother? She's a survivor. She weathered a storm. A real one. The kind that sweeps everything away, that rips away your bearings, your strength, your breath. She let herself sink. For a long time. And I watched her do it, without understanding, without really helping her. Sometimes even judging her. But one day, she decided to swim. Against the current. Slowly. Painfully. But with a determination I've seen in no one else. She resurfaced. And she reopened her bookstore. And she taught me, without saying a word, what it means to rebuild yourself. She is the bravest woman I know. I stood there, frozen. Hands placed flat on the desk. In tears. But happy. I never needed him to say that. But hearing it there, without me being supposed to listen, was the best gift of all. He no longer saw me as a broken woman, as a mother in decline. He saw me as an example. As a strength. And I will carry that look with me until my last breath. So yes. One day, my son said to me, "All you do is eat and sleep." And that day, I thought it was all over. That I had become a shadow of myself. But then I did this. I opened my bookstore again, despite the fear, despite the emptiness, despite the grief. I rekindled my passion, this flame that I thought was extinguished forever. I reconnected with my son, thread by thread, word by word. I found my name, my strength, my place. I am no longer that woman in a dressing gown, frozen in front of a cup of cold tea. I'm Susan Mitchell. Widow, yes. Mother, always. But also, and above all, alive. Founder of the Autumn Leaves, bookseller, dreamer, rebuilder of worlds. And every day, as I open this door, as I turn the key, as I turn on the lights, I choose to leave. In my opinion. For him. For those who, somewhere, still need words to heal.